Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. Late last week, about three different regions, oblasts, and Ukraine announced full mobilization. Now, these are oblasts that are in the west of Ukraine. Up until this point, um, the units that have been mobilized to fight on the front lines have almost all exclusively been in eastern Ukraine. Uh, now, uh, three oblasts announced full mobilization of their active duty units to mobilize to the front lines. Well, I guess not to be outdone, uh, President Zelensky announced full mobilization. All males 18 or over are instructed to report to military recruitment centers for immediate conscription. This is backed up by the fact that they have a cell phone app that has been widely touted in the Western media. And if a Ukrainian citizen sees any male suspected to be 18 or over on the street, in the store, anywhere at all, they are to be reported. So, by the way, the 18 plus age does not have an upper limit. This was announced at just about the same time that Zelensky also announced that there will be no elections held at any level in Ukraine until the conflict is over. Meanwhile, he is still refusing to hold any peace talks. So he is absolutely planning on holding on to power for absolutely as long as possible. To say until this is over, well, they're sending people over to another country to be trained to fly F-16s, and that will take a minimum of 6 months. I think a large part of this is all, to in preparation for the NATO meeting at Vilnius, which is supposed to happen about July 10th or 11th. So, that tells you that, there is no intent to hold peace talks. There is no intent to end this conflict anytime soon at all. They intend for this to continue for years. So the news of this full mobilization, which you got to consider will just for ground troops, that this will take at least weeks of training, but it has been widely reported that they are giving people as little as 2 or 3 weeks of training, maybe 4 at the outside, and then throwing them on the front line. This is also a clear message that since the beginning of their offensive, that they have lost a considerable number of troops, and they're this is the last-ditch effort. I would guess that any statement of losses in the last 3 weeks below any statement below 20,000 would be inaccurate. I'm guessing that the numbers are above that. So they've been, when they're actively making attempts to advance, they're losing at least 1,000 troops per day, casualties, killed and injured. And nobody is allowed to retreat. Even the soldiers that are injured are not allowed to retreat. I've already recounted how soldiers that were carrying an injured soldier back to a trench, the anti-retreat forces came up in a Bradley fighting vehicle and killed all of them because they were not on the front lines. Soldiers are surrendering to the Russians and stating that they did so because they had injured people and they could not retreat from the front lines to get treatment for the people that were injured. So instead they surrendered to the Russians, who purportedly treated the injured people, which, you know, when they've done prisoner swaps, the people that were, the prisoners that were swapped out that said they had been injured had been given medical treatment. So this is being confirmed by Ukrainian soldiers. So this is not something that is propaganda that's being made up by Russia. This is actually confirmed. Now, you have to figure that if these people wanted to be on the front lines, that they wanted to be fighting this battle, they would have already signed up to do so. Meanwhile, Russia reports, of course, you can take this with a grain of salt, they report that they're having 1,300 volunteers sign up on a daily basis. So they're having enough, if this is accurate, they're having enough men to fill an entire brigade on a daily basis. It won't do any good for them to conscript all of these Ukrainian males if all of the equipment on the front lines that's being, all of the tanks, the armored personnel carriers, the vehicles, the weapons, large weapons, if the artillery are all being destroyed, and by the time that these people are through with training, there's nothing left for that to hand them to fight with. What are you going to do? Hand them knives? There were these claims that the Russians were out of weapons and all they had were shovels, and that's been a big joke, in some online communities. But this needs to end. They need to hold peace talks. When they hold this NATO meeting, the heads of NATO need to tell them, we don't have anything else to give you. You need to sit down and talk. Right now, Biden should be telling Zelensky, sit down and talk. Schultz of Germany should be telling him this. Macron of France should be telling him this. Just stop, sit down, talk, negotiate. But I don't see it happening. They really are going to fight to the last Ukrainian. This is not honorable. You're destroying your entire culture, your entire nation. There are not going to be any men left that are, maybe not at all, but definitely not any that are not injured mentally, physically. What future for your country does this portend? This needs to be ended diplomatically. But instead, fight to the last Ukrainian. I've asked this before. If you fight to the last Ukrainian, what are you fighting for? Then there is no Ukraine. If you negotiate, even if you give up territory, you still got a country. You still got people. This is all about lines on a map. And for money that is flowing to the top of corrupt officials in the government, the oligarchs, the people that own property in other countries. What is the purpose? There is no chance, especially at this stage, that Ukraine is going to be able to, push the Russians back. The Russians haven't even completely mobilized utilized the troops that were called up, late last year. Colonel Douglas McGregor, and Scott Ritter, they both estimate that there are 500 to 700,000 Russian forces in the Donbass region. And for you to have an offensive, you have to outnumber the number of forces that you are trying to push back. Preferably by a number of 10 to 1. That's not going to happen. You're not going to pull those kind of numbers together in Ukraine, and you're not going to pull together even if they have the F-16s. They had an Air Force at the beginning of this. And 6 months is still not enough to be truly proficient with an F-16. F-16s are 40 years old. They're coming up against, brand new, fifth generation or whatever, Russian jets and drones and, helicopters that have significant defenses. All of this equipment and anti-aircraft systems, the S-300, the S-400, the Russians have got layered anti-aircraft systems. They've got their ground forces are trained to operate in coordination with one another. It's already been reported by Ukrainians that when they had 3 brigades trying to make an advance, there was no communication or coordination between them. So this is how the new troops are going to be trained, with no communication or coordination. Without outside pressure, without stopping the flow of weapons, the flow of money to Ukraine, this is not going to end well for Ukraine. No war ends well. No war ever ends well. There is no positive to it. Well, let's wait and see how this turns out, because it looks very dark to me. All right, share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this channel and my presidential campaign, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.